welcome to another episode of Jim's Allotment Garden. Okay, so for the pumpkins, as you can see, I've got them drying in the second greenhouse. Now what I've done is I've taken them off the plant as I explained, left about 3 or 4 inches of the stalk on there, just cut them off with a knife. And I've brought them into the greenhouse here just so they can ripen. As you can see, they've got a lot more colour. When I put them in here the other day, they were all pretty much yellow like this one. As you can see, these have developed the orangey colour. That one there was orange and it's gone a little bit darker. But you know, if you put them in the greenhouse like this, they will, you know, sort of ripen and develop this orange colour. Now, from a weight point of view, this one here, this first one is 21 kilos. The second one is 15 kilos. The third one there, the yellowy coloured one here, that's 18 kilos. The little one's 7.5 kilos, and that one on the end there is 15.2 kilos. So, you know, from a size point of view, that's not too bad at all. They're a nice size, you can handle them, you know, and they'll be nice to carve for Halloween at the end of next month. So that's what the pumpkins are. And to put it into perspective, in my local paper there was a gentleman there this week who's actually got a £380 pumpkin that he grew not far from me, which is probably about all of these put together in one, really. But you know, so you can get them much bigger than this, but I like them at this size because, you know, you can carve them quite easily, and you know, they make for good ornaments for the Halloween season. So over the last couple of weeks we've had quite a lot of rain. You can see the ground's been sort of quite wet, but over the last 2 or 3 days we've had quite a lot of wind, as you can hear, and it's also been nice and hot and shiny. So that's been ideal weather to dry everything out. Now, when things are dry, that's the ideal time to collect your seeds. Now, I just want to explain a few of the plants on the allotment that you can get seeds from at this time of year. So if you look at the asparagus plant is now dried off, as you can see. The ones at the back there haven't dried quite as much, but the berries are ready. As soon as you see the berries have gone red like this, what I suggest you do is just with your hand like that, just pull along like that, and what you'll end up with is a handful of berries. You don't need too many of these. In each of these little berries you'll get about 3 or 4 seeds, which is more than enough, really. So if you just do that, and I'll just show you now. My pots fell off somewhere. Once again with the pot. So just quickly come in the greenhouse. Now these little berries, inside each berry, you can leave these to dry in the tray like this. Then they'll dry quite merrily, and then what they'll do is these little black seeds here, as you can see, that black seed there, that's the seeds you want. Now in each one of these berries there's going to be 3 or 4 seeds, so this really, what I've got here, is more than enough seed to you know, to grow some more asparagus plants. Now asparagus takes quite a few years to develop. It takes, from seed like this, it'll take at least 4 years to get to the plants that we've got out here. Now these plants here are got to be at least sort of 3 or 4 or 5 years old, and that's really when you can start to crop them. So if your plants do die off, and sometimes that does happen, they can be happy in a piece of ground for quite a number of years, then all of a sudden, for some reason, they just die off. You know, you get a wet winter, or you get well, basically wet weather. Now asparagus don't like wet weather at all, they tend to rot off at the roots, which is obviously, you know, going to kill them. So what it's always worthwhile doing is keeping some plants going. Now I've put this on a number of videos in the past, but what I tend to do is I tend to grow a few asparagus plants every year and then grow them on. So I'll basically every year I collect some seeds like this, just a few, you don't need too many. So that's more than enough for me there now. And then what you do is you basically plant them in the spring into pots, and then within a year you'll get a small asparagus plant like this, as you can see. Now these are also starting to die off now, so they'll die down to the, obviously it's an herbaceous plant, so basically what that means is it'll die down to the ground, then basically there's like a root which will stay alive over the winter, and then again in the spring it'll shoot up again. Now this plant here is a year old, and then after a year you pot them up, and then you get a plant which is a bit bigger like that, and basically what you're doing is you're developing the root of the plant, and then after a couple of years of that you can then plant them out, and then they'll develop into the larger plants as you see around there now. But this is the right time of year now to collect the seed and for next year, and then in the spring you can plant the seed and start your sort of next group of plants off, if you like. Now you can keep them in the pot for sort of 2 or 3 years, and then plant them out into the garden, and then within a year or two they'll get themselves established, and you'll end up with nice big 6-foot plants like this during this time of the year. Obviously what you do is you actually eat the spears at the beginning of the year when they first started coming through, when they're about 6 inches long. But what you need to do every year is leave a few on so that they grow up into the adult plant like this, and then that'll put all the goodness back into the roots, and then they'll be good for years to come. Now, all being well, if the conditions stay okay, you know, asparagus plants will thrive for a good sort of 20-30 years before you need to do anything with them. But what you need to do is make sure that you let them grow every year, so all the goodness goes back into the roots, and then they'll stay healthy. But that's what the best thing to do with asparagus is at this time of year. Okay, over the past couple of weeks we've had some really sort of wet weather. Really in September I think we've had only the last few days that have been dry really, so I've not been able to bring the sunflowers in. However, over the past couple of days it has been dry, so I've seized the opportunity, and I've taken the sunflower heads off the ones that are finished. And as you can see, that's kind of what they look like. So I've brushed all the flowers, the flower heads, like I told you last time. Obviously, a sunflower isn't one flower; it's many hundreds of flowers in one kind of structure. So you know, you've got all these little sort of heads, these sort of bits, these flower heads on here. So what you need to do is brush them off to let the air get through. Put them in your greenhouse, keep them in the sun, and then they should dry off. Don't make the mistake I made last year, and I've noticed there's a few of these seeds gone from here. You can get mice in your greenhouse, and they will eat all of your sunflowers if you're not careful. So what I suggest you do is the sunflower that you want to keep the seed for next year, get that up on a shelf like I've done here. This is the one that I'm going to keep, which is basically the biggest one. Get it up on a shelf where the mice are less likely to go. And then you know, sort of dry it off. As soon as the seeds are dry, what you can do is just sort of tease them out like that. As you can see, that's the actual seed there. So all you need to do is basically rub your finger over them like that. The seeds will come out like this, and then what you can do is put them into a brown paper bag, and then just dry them off. Probably the best thing to do is put them in a tray, dry them off in a tray. Somewhere where you're not going to get mice, because they'll eat all of these. Dry them off in the sun, and then as soon as they are dry and they've formed a hard shell, then put them in a brown bag to store over the winter. Then they'll be okay for you to plant next year. Okay, another plant that we can get seeds off this time of year is the sweet peas. Now, as you can see, these sweet peas have pretty much gone over now. There's the odd flower here and there just at the top. But basically these plants are now packed with seeds, and these are the seed pods here. So if we just take a few of these, what you'll need to do is sort of pick them off like this. Just put your finger through. As soon as they're dry like this, they'll come off quite easily. You can either pull them off or cut them off with a pair of scissors. But I don't know if you can see, but all over the floor here, look, these are the seeds that have already dropped, so I know full well that they're more than ready to come off. Now if you take the seed pods like that, all you need to do is put them into a tray and let them dry, and then what will happen is inside each of these little pods, just like peas, you'll get these black seeds forming like that. And now those are the seeds that you can plant next year to grow your sweet peas. Now I must admit, I've always found that if you keep your own sweet pea seeds, they're never as good as shop bought ones. With shop bought ones you get sort of pretty much 80–90% germination rate, you know, and they'll sort of grow away. With your own, it's less than that, it's probably more like 50. So what you need to do with sweet peas is save plenty of seed, and then put those in like this, and just sort of rub your finger through the pod like that, get the little seed pods out. Keep them dry over the winter. Obviously put them in the tray like this to dry them out, and then over the winter what you can do is put these in a brown paper bag or an envelope, and then come next spring you can take them out and plant them, and then they'll sort of grow away quite nicely. What I would suggest you do is keep them in the shed, let them have a frost, so that they know that they've been through a winter, and then those are your seeds for your sweet peas next year. So one last tip with the sweet peas, what I'd suggest you do is, if you've got multiple coloured sweet peas like I've had this year, don't take all your seeds from one place. Go along the row and take a few seed pods from each of the plants, and then you'll guarantee that you'll have a nice mixture of colours for next year. If you take them all from one plant, you're more likely to get all one colour. Obviously if you've got a particular colour that you really like and you only want to grow that one, then obviously do the opposite. And just take the seed pod from that. You can't guarantee, because the seeds, you can't guarantee it's going to be the same colour as the parent plant, but you're more likely to have more of that colour than the others. But if you're like me and you like a mixture of colours, sort of go along like this, take a few seed pods from each of the plants. Obviously wait till they're brown, you know, if they're kind of still green like this, you can take them. If the weather's dry, it's better to take them off than if you know, whilst they're dry than when they're wet. But when they're nice and brown like this, the seed pods will release the seeds that much better. So they are better drying on the plant. But as I say, go along your row of sweet peas or whatever. Take a few seeds from each of the plants, and then you'll guarantee to have a nice mixture of colours for next year as well. Okay, so as you can see, the calendulas have all but finished at the bottom. So you know, there are the odd ones still out, but I'll leave them. But they will eventually die off like these ones up here. And what you want to do is, you can do one of two things. You can either save the seed for next year, and obviously these are the seed pods here. So if you, obviously a lot of these have already dispersed, they're all over the floor here. But if you can get one that kind of looks like that, that's with the seed still in, and all you need to do is take that from the plant, dry it, and then if you rub it between your fingers like that, those are the actual seeds there, the dark pieces. We'll just get one out, and then there you go. So that's actually one of the seeds there. All I typically do is shake them onto the ground again, because I always grow them in the same position. I always have a row of them here, and I just shake them onto the ground, and then next year they'll just grow there quite naturally, almost like a weed, and then they'll sort of grow through for next year as well. So you can either sprinkle them on the ground or take the heads off. I wouldn't take the heads off whilst they're green like this. I'd wait till they've started to go brown like that, and then obviously all you need to do is dry that off, and then if you run it through your fingers like that, you'll see that the seeds, like these bits here, start to come out, and those are the bits you want for next year to grow yourself some more plants. So that's what the calendulas look like at the moment. Okay, so for the beans you can see a massive difference from the last video that I did a couple of weeks ago, and as you can see, all the beans, the leaves have started to fall off, and then all of the bean pods have sort of fattened up and they've formed the beans inside. Now this is the ideal time to take the beans off the plant, so all you need to do, exactly like you did when you picked them, just take them off at the pod like that, and then put them in a tray in your greenhouse or in your shed, let them dry out, and then you can basically shell them, get the beans out for next year, then you won't need to buy any of the seeds. Exactly the same way for the runner beans. The only difference with runner beans is I recommend that you wait for them to dry actually on the plant. So if I just quickly go down and show you the runner bean plant. As you can see here, the beans have started to dry actually on the plant. Now that when they feel hard and sort of crackly, that's the time to take them off the plant. So just to come along here, you can see the plants have really died back. The bottom of these plants have really died out now. As you can see, if I come through here, you can see how all of these are dry, and they'll start to kind of rattle. That's the best time to get the beans. Now, it's much better for you to get them earlier than later, because what they can do is these can open of their own accord, which is obviously the natural thing to do, and all the bean seed will drop all over the floor. So what I suggest you do, as soon as you see them going brown like this, take them off the plant. When you've got a nice dry day, because obviously your biggest enemy is moisture, which will cause them to go sort of mouldy. So if you've got a nice dry day like today, this is the ideal opportunity for you to take them off, put them in a bucket or on a tray, put them in your shed where it's nice and dry, ideally in the sunlight, and then let them finish their sort of drying off period in the shed, and then you can shell them and get the beans out for next year. So in exactly the same way as other plants, obviously weeds are just the same. So any weed you get like this one that's packed with seed, now's the time of year where it's going to be throwing its seed everywhere. And as the saying goes, you know, one year of weed is 7 years of seed. So it's well worth you keeping your allotment really clear now. If you do get any weeds on the allotment, try to get them off as much as you possibly can do, because it's at this time of year where a lot of the annual weeds are going to be setting seed everywhere, and that's just going to make more and more work for you next year. So to make your life easier next year, what I suggest you do is any weeds that you find that's going to be throwing seeds everywhere, get them out as much as you can now. Get them in the either the recycling bin or burn them or whatever. Obviously if the weeds have already run to seed, I wouldn't put them on your compost, because the seeds are likely to survive in the compost. And then obviously when you spread that on your allotment next year, you're just going to be spreading the weed seed all over your allotment. So any weeds that you've got on your allotment that have got seeds all over them, get them out, get them in the recycling bin or burn them, and then you'll most certainly reduce the amount of weeds that you have over your plot next year. Okay, then a little bit more on the fuchsia. This is obviously one of the cuttings that I took last year, and as you can see, it's now sort of flowered quite nicely, and that's what the flowers look like. So I know it's a hardy variety because the cutting was taken from a plant outside in a garden, and the plant was quite established. So I know it's been there for 4, 5, 6 years. So it's gone through a few winters. So it's definitely hardy variety. The leaves are obviously quite a rich green, and the flowers are quite pointed. And then we've got the inside part is purple and the outside is red, as you can see. So I've gone through fuchsia, but now I've got a brilliant book for fuchsias. This isn't it, I can't put my hand on it at the moment, but this is one of the fuchsia books that I've got. This comes highly recommended. So this is basically practical advice of growing and caring for fuchsias, as it's called. Now, so from what I know, if you turn to the outdoor varieties, if you like, so these are the ones that are suitable as hedges or whatever. Now, if you go down the list here, this isn't a brilliant list because it doesn't actually show you a picture, but I believe that this variety is called Brilliant because it's a single, Obviously a double fuchsia looks kind of like that. This is a single looking like that, so it's got a single kind of set of flat petals on the inside there. So it's a single. It's red and purple. The height of it, I would imagine, from the structure of it here, and also I know what the parent plant looks like, they don't typically grow too high. They grow around 2.5 foot, which is sort of 75 centimetres, and that's typical of what this one looks like. It's not a trailing fuchsia because the branches would be much thinner and it would bend over more. So I know this is a bush variety because of the size of the stems. So it's most certainly an outdoor one. It's red and purple, and the two varieties there are either Brilliant or Calendonia. That's the only other one that it could possibly be. There is another red and purple one there, but that's much bigger, and this doesn't look like it would grow to a metre, you know, let alone 1.5 metres. So at the moment, until I find my other book, which is where it's got actual photographs of the each of the flowers, I believe this is Brilliant, the variety. But anyway, this book comes highly recommended. I don't do many book reviews. It's one thing I've been always planning to do, but I've not really got round to. But this is one of the books that I do use. But I have got a considerably better book which I can't put my hand on, which shows each of the varieties and pictures. And I'll show you that when I find it. But as I say, that's what the fuchsia now looks like, and it is a brilliant purple colour with a nice red outer. Okay, so in the greenhouse we've developed a bit of a problem. I believe that we may have some kind of, or some level of blight. I don't know if you can see these leaves have started to wilt back. Now that's a reasonably good sign that we've got some blight in here, particularly on the stalk there where you can see it's gone black. And if we look a little bit further down here, you can see it's on the bottom of the plant as well, particularly this one here. You can see there. So what I'm going to do is cut out anything which is suspect. Now when you're doing this, what you want to do is make sure that you don't touch any healthy branches of any of the other, or leaves of the other, because what you don't want to do is transfer the spores, which are really minute, over onto the plant. So hold it by a bit that looks healthy, cut off back to a healthy part here, and then what we can do is basically take it out of the greenhouse, try not to shake it or let any come off. So what I'll do is I'll just go through now, cutting off all of these bits that have got suspected of blight, and then I'll dispose of those in the green recycling bin. The other thing you can do obviously is burn them, but I would recommend that you put them in the green bin. Keep the green bin well away from any of your vegetables, well, potatoes and tomatoes, keep them well away, and obviously aubergines as well. Keep them away from there as much as you can, and obviously that'll be taken away, then they'll be away from your plants then. So I'll just go through and cut out any affected parts, and I'll show you what it looks like when it's finished. Okay, so that's the greenhouse now tidied out. So what I've done is I've obviously taken out any leaves or anything that looked dodgy. Obviously we have got natural dieback at this time of year anyway, so you will start to see some leaves starting to go brown, and that's not blight. Blight is basically where you get areas of dark sort of patches forming on the sort of the leaf stalks here, or actually on the leaves themselves. So I believe I've got all of the infected parts of the plants out now. Now, as you can see, what I've done is I've also weeded down the bottom. That's really important with blight. It's a fungus, so you know it needs a moist environment to survive. So the best thing you can do is keep the greenhouse as well ventilated as possibly can. To keep all the windows wide open, even though it's getting cooler at night. Keep the windows open, and that'll sort of dry the air out, and it'll basically reduce the environment that's required for the blight to basically flourish. Now also what I've done is I've taken out all the weeds and that are at the bottom, so it's nice and clear. Obviously get free airflow through. Now there are a few plants that are still affected. I've left them in because what I've done basically is I've taken off all of the good fruit off the plants that I've taken out. I've taken out probably about 4 or 5 plants, out the greenhouse. And what I've done is I've put some ripe fruit with it. So what this ripe fruit will do is it'll encourage these others to ripen off the plant. Now this plant here, as you can see, it's got quite a few sort of large tomatoes on. Now these are really green, so these are going to struggle to ripen off the plant. Now there is a little bit of sign at the bottom there. I don't know if you can see this darkening here. Now that is the signs of blight, so that this plant may possibly have it. But what I've done is I've left it in because I want these tomatoes to ripen. Now I'll obviously keep my eye on that. If it does get considerably worse in the next couple of days, what I will do is obviously take all the fruit off, exactly like I've done here, and then take that entire plant out, and then take the sticks out. Obviously if you've had blight in your greenhouse, what you need to do is wash it all out thoroughly. Jay's fluid will help no end. So clean all the glass, clean all the stalks, anything that plants have come into contact with. Obviously if you have been trimming the plants down with your secateurs, wash your secateurs in some warm soapy water or Jay's fluid again, just to make sure that you've killed any spores off that are on there. This plant over here also is showing some signs of, you can see this darkening on the bottom of the stem there. So this plant may also have some blight at the bottom there. So all I've done basically is taken off the leaves around there, keep the airflow to kind of minimise it. What I will do is pick all the fruit off as best I can. I can't see these other smaller fruits developing much further, but I'll keep my eye on that. If that gets any worse in the next few days, what I'll do is I'll basically remove the plant, take all the fruit off that's any good. Any green I'll try and ripen on the windowsill. But what I might need to do is discard any of the rest. And that's basically all you can do to control it at this time of year. Obviously, at this time of the year, you don't need to water too much, you just need to keep the plants ticking over. So, water the least amount as possible. Water the ground and not the stalk. You want to keep the plant as dry as possible. Most certainly don't get any of the leaves wet. So just water the ground. The minimum that's required basically. Don't get any water on the stems, and then ideally that should control it as best you can. Okay, so underneath all of this mayhem here, which is the birdhouse gourd plant, I don't know if you can see, but there's absolutely hundreds of gourds on. I don't think any of them are going to come to because it's too late in the year really, but there must be 50 gourds all over it. So we've got branches with male flowers, then obviously the female flowers have turned into these little gourds here, which have all pollinated, and they are, the actual plant is absolutely covered in them now, but I think it's too late for them to actually develop anything. But what I wanted to show you was the apple tree. Now as you can see, the apples are growing really well. They're starting to get this blush on them, which tells me now that they're ready. And there's a few that have actually dropped off in the last couple of weeks with the wind that we've had. So rather than lose the apples, what I'm going to do is actually pick them. Now, if you're going to pick apples, the best thing to do is pick them straight off the tree, and then put them on a tray so they're not touching each other in a dark place, and they'll store like that for a number of months. But I think if I leave these on this tree for very much longer, they're basically just going to all drop off, or they'll get some insects and eating into them and stuff. So what I'm going to do now is just pick these apples off. Hopefully the ones that haven't quite ripened, like this green one here, that'll ripen off when it's off the tree. But what I'm going to do, at least take some of these off now, because I'm worried if we get a good storm and a load of wind that it may well knock all of these off. So I hope this episode was of some use to you. Please don't hesitate to put any comments you've got below, and I'll always get back to you, and I'll see you on the next episode of Jim's Garden.